Nobody ever wants to wish summer away, and no one wants to talk about the next school year while we're in the middle of summer. But the next school year will be upon us quicker than we think, especially for those individuals going from high school to college, making that big transition. I really want to make sure that we address that, and in particular, address the fueling challenges that are going to come from that, especially for incoming freshman student athletes. It is a big jump going from high school to college, and I want to make sure that you are prepared as possible going into it. So the big difference is that in high school, your day typically is really built for you. You have set training times, you have set school times, you have set lunch times, and everything is really structured, regimented, and for the most part, handled for you. Whether it be food at home from your parents or guardians, kind of taken care of and preparing everything there, to the scheduled lunchtime at school itself, wherever you're at, there's usually a system and a structure predetermined in place, having everything available for you to where you don't really have to think. You just kind of go about your day, knowing everything's going to be there, and you just show up. That's kind of the name of the game there. But that structure that you are taking for granted is going to become incredibly apparent when you get to college, when that structure is no longer and you are left to your own devices to recreate that structure for yourself. Because what changes and what tends to kind of break in the very beginning isn't necessarily that the food disappears and that the food just isn't available, but that schedule completely changes. Because unlike in high school, when everything is really structured and regimented, almost on repeat day to day, in college, the entire structure is varied. Every single day is going to look unique and different, from class times being completely different from day to day, to where you don't have a scheduled first period to eighth period type of a thing. You can have classes back to back, or one in the morning, one in the evening. They can be all over the place in different areas of the campus, even. So your class times are sporadic. Your training is likely going to be moving around, jumbling schedules, especially if you have to share weight rooms with any other teams. And no 2 days are going to be the same. Like, that's just the name of the game there. And so that support system and those guardrails that you had kind of being able to help navigate things in high school are no longer. You are now left in control to try and recreate those, to be able to build that structure for yourself around when are your class times, when are your training times, and with no 2 days looking the same, what can we control? Control what you can control to set that structure to be able to help maintain that consistency. And this usually hits on day one, right out of the gate, because it is incredibly different. And if you happen to be fortunate enough to where you don't experience that on day one, and you're like, all right, this is great, I don't really see the big deal about it. Within that first full week, you will notice that. You will feel that difference. In the moment that the training load increases, and the moment that you get into the full season, and the classes get through syllabus week, and you start to really balance and navigate all the classwork, it really starts to hit home how many different things that you need to juggle. And if you're trying to incorporate a social life with all of that, which I recommend you do, it can become a lot very, very quickly. So that appreciation for what mom and dad and everybody at home had been doing for you and what the structure of high school was becomes very apparent of how much you may have taken for granted. So now that you have that awareness, we need to make sure that we're starting to dive into creating that for yourself. And the first thing is setting up the environment, because the setup itself isn't necessarily going to carry you. Unlike in high school and at home, when you had your parents at home, or you had like the structured times and the lunch cafeteria and everything at high school, all right there, to where again, you just showed up and it was done for you. This is no longer the case. You are now needing to be able to coordinate and plan for yourself when and where you're going to acquire these things. So, fortunately, most college programs now are providing food. It became an arms race not too long ago of all universities essentially trying to compete with one another in the kitchen, which as a sports dietitian is great. Love to see it. So, food is a lot more available, but that doesn't mean that it is always available. And you need to be able to set yourself up to account for those unique situations when you can't just easily go and grab something. And that typically tends to be when the schedule changes of either training runs late or if a meal room all of a sudden has to be closed unexpectedly for renovations, or in the situations to where if it's a holiday and you've still got training and you're on campus, but the rest of the student body is gone. They're going to close a lot of those typical dining areas just because they don't have the population to make it worthwhile. So as a result, you may be having to either fend for yourself or walk a little bit further to find places that are open, and you just need to be able to make sure that you set yourself up. So while there is an increase in an abundance of food available, you need to not take that for granted. Just like we shouldn't have taken everything in high school for granted, don't take that food being available for granted. Always have some backup plans, always have that system in place and understanding of where do I need to go to get food, how would I get that food there, and making sure that it's available at the critical times that you do need it. So, again, the universities typically are going to be able to provide food at those appropriate times, but you want to make sure that you just have the backup plan just in case. Because the big thing too is not all programs are the same. Just because after you get your acceptance letter and you're going off to college and you just got that scholarship and you're like, this is great. You look, you realize they have a sports dietitian. Man, my nutrition's taken care of. I'm golden. Not necessarily the case. Because at the big programs, they very well may have multiple dietitians on staff. They may have multiple training tables. They may have food available almost around the clock. But even at the bigger schools, those sports dietitians are going to be stretched thin because they aren't going to have one dietitian per 5 student athletes. Usually it's one dietitian for about 2 to 500 student athletes, depending on how many they have in the school itself. That is a lot. And on top of just working with the athletes, they also have to balance budgets, deal with the logistics of food delivery, a lot of the food service aspects of things. There's a whole lot behind the scenes that they need to take care of and manage where they get spread thin. And that's not a knock against the dietitians themselves or the universities. That's just the system of where things are at right now. So if you're going into there thinking that you're going to have this one-on-one where the individual is going to know every single thing about you, your entire schedule, your entire plan, the foods that you like, the foods you dislike, it's not always feasible. So while we may think the bigger programs are going to be great because they have all of those things, sometimes that nutrition component can still fall between the cracks where you still need to be able to be accountable for yourself. And at the smaller programs, same thing. They may only have 1 or 2 dietitians for the entire campus. So while the support is still real, there's going to be fewer windows, fewer opportunities to meet with them because they are being stretched so thin. They have to oversee so many different student athletes. And with the smaller programs too, there may be fewer fueling windows, fewer locations to be able to acquire that food. And so it just takes a little bit more planning and logistics to make sure that when you need that food, you know where to go, how to get it, when to get it. So it's not to say that any one program is better or worse than the other. It's that they're all different. And it's really making sure that you're setting your expectations of what you're walking into to ensure that you are still taking care of yourself. And so, with that, at the dining hall, the big thing here is understanding that when you get into that dining hall, you can fall, a lot of times athletes fall into 1 or 2 traps. They notice that when they walk in there may be too many options. And this definitely tends to be a situation if you go to a major D1 university where there is a large student body population. Those main dining halls are designed to be able to fuel hundreds of students simultaneously. And so as a result, there's going to be a lot of variety, a lot of options to be able to tailor to those hundreds of student athletes coming through every hour, every minute, all day. And so as a result, it can be very easy to get overwhelmed with those options. And a lot of them too are going to have kind of a dessert area where there will be some ice cream, there will be some treats, there will be some cakes and things like that. It can be very enticing and a little overwhelming to where you see that and you're like, man, this is always available. I'm absolutely going to go and have some of that. To where all of a sudden the ice cream and the cakes and the cookies start to take up a little bit more of your plate, as opposed to those foods that are actually going to fuel you, not only to be able to perform, but to be able to recover and make the adaptations to continue to improve. So with the cookies and ice cream taking up the plate, we have less protein, we have less fruits, we have less vegetables, things that the body needs, again, to be able to perform optimally. Then on the other side, there may be too few options, too few opportunities to where that program may be able to offer some food before training and immediately after training, but they may not have much else outside of that. And then as a result, you are left to fend for yourself a whole lot more throughout the rest of the day. So both of these structures are problems and both of these structures are challenges, but different. And it's just making sure that you are prepared to be able to navigate both of those scenarios. And the challenge with all this too is that your needs from a fueling standpoint of how much you need to be consuming increases right when the typical structure in the systems that you had in place decrease, because you're now entering college. The trainings are going to be a lot more intense. The demands are going to be a lot more intense. The pressure is going to be more intense. All of those things compound to result in an increased need for fueling. That paired with the fact that we now have less structure. You're not going to be able to have periods 1 through 8 designated times. Lunchtime isn't necessarily going to be structured and set on a calendar for you to go to. You're not going to have that family dinner scheduled where mom's going to be hollering, hey, come get dinner type of a thing. You are left to fend for yourself to implement that structure, to implement those systems, to be able to fuel and meet all of those energy demands that your body is now asking for because of that increased training session. And not only that, but outside of training, it's a long distance walking around campus. Like, you do burn a lot of energy in that regard as well. And you need to make sure that you're fueling yourself accordingly for that too. So this is just something to really be aware of because this situation is very real. And so the fix isn't necessarily a meal plan. It's building that system on your own to be able to put together a little bit of that structure, because you are not going to be able to outplan a schedule that changes weekly. And if not daily, the schedule is always going to change. The coach may want to adjust when training schedule is. You may end up in a situation where the meal room is going through a renovation or the schedule changes there. You need to be able to implement systems and structures that are going to be able to be repeated regardless of the scenario and situation thrown at you. So that comes back to making sure that you have some of those staple items. You know exactly where food is going to be on each of the respective days ahead of time to be able to prepare for and account for those things. And it's not setting up something rigid and in stone that can never change, because that's the name of this, is being fluid and being able to help make sure that whatever changes do pop up, we have kind of that backup plan readily available. And the biggest skill to be able to help with that is truly just learning how to feed yourself. And this comes down into kind of like 4 little areas to really focus and prioritize of building a grocery list, then with that grocery list, navigating the grocery store without getting lost and just wandering around aimlessly looking for everything. And then once you've got the groceries, being able to cook a few reliable meals. And once cooked, keeping that food safe, having proper food safety standards, making sure that it's being prepared, cooked, and preserved appropriately. Because there's nothing worse than going through all that trouble to make everything and then it spoils. So whatever program you land into, no matter how big, how small, how many dietitians they have, how many dining halls that they have, there will come a point in time that you are going to need to be able to do this on your own. A lot of times, at the very latest, it comes when you have to live off campus, when you don't have that easy access to on campus dining every time, and when the weekends roll around and you don't want to go all the way to campus to get food, and you want to be able to kind of stay at home a little bit, especially in the wintertime, to be able to just prepare the food there. These are those core strategies to really be able to help make sure that you set yourself up for success in all those different scenarios. And the best time to be able to start working on all this is now, while you are still in high school. If you are a high schooler watching this, you're going to be in a great environment to be able to learn all these things because you've got the support system still around you to be able to assist with that. You've got the support system to be able to help make that grocery run for you, to be able to help cook the meals, and to be able to help build that kind of recipe bank in the back of your head of what your go-to meals are. And that's what we should be focusing on, is starting to build some of those go-to meals to be able to ensure that when you get to campus, you know, hey, I can make some chicken and pasta. I can make a burger and potatoes. I can make eggs and pancakes type of a thing. It doesn't need to be elaborate. You're not trying to be a Michelin star chef. You just need to be able to get the basics, get those key components, understand how to work an oven, learn how to work a stovetop, understand how to properly utilize a microwave for a whole lot of different things, and play around with some of those different types of foods to be able to cook and foods that you enjoy. This is, again, the time to be able to do that. Build that comfort, build that level of just trust and understanding in yourself to be able to establish those habits so when you get to college, you've got that foundation to lean on. And that's what I'm going to challenge you to do is plan next week's grocery, sit down, figure out, okay, what are the foods that I really enjoy? How are these going to be able to fuel me for what my training or my schedule is requiring? And then what do I need to be able to execute that? What type of preparation methods are going to be needed for that as well, which ties into leaning in and building those 3 meals for you to be able to cook, those go-to meals to start to establish. So it begins with that grocery list of being able to understand, if this is what I'm wanting to make, how do I break that down to the specific ingredients? How do I write that out? And then how do I navigate the grocery store to be able to pick that up? Like, that is step one. And once you have that, it's building and preparing and cooking those types of things. And the more that you do that, just getting the reps in, the more comfortable you're going to feel with it and the easier it's going to become. And that's what's going to allow you to try some different foods, some different recipes to be able to establish those 3 meals. So start there, build upon that, but we want this to lead into being able to have those 3 go-tos. And the big takeaway is that nobody is going to really just hand you that structure in college. Nobody is going to have you walk in there and be like, here, this is what you should be doing every single day, every hour of the day. You are in charge. And that's the beauty of it, to where you fully get to be able to be responsible for you. But also, that comes with a little bit of pressure. We've never done that before. And that's why there's no right or wrong way to go about doing it. You just need to be able to make sure that you're taking the time to think through it, to plan and prepare for it. From the fueling perspective, just making sure that you're giving yourself adequate food at the appropriate times and also making sure that you're staying hydrated. The ones who are going to learn this quicker are the ones who are going to be able to perform the best, improve the quickest, and be able to make the most impact, not only on the field and in the gym and in the team itself, but in the classroom. The better fueled you are, the better you're going to be able to learn and retain the information that you're learning. And all of these things are going to be able to help set you up for success. And so, in that preparation of going from high school to college, here are some of the 3 questions that tend to pop up the most. The first one being, what if my school provides all my meals? Do I still need this? Absolutely. Because when you say if your school provides all of your meals, a lot of times it may look like it's going to provide all of your meals. There will still be situations where it won't be, or you're going to find yourself in a situation where you need to still be able to acquire and or prepare food for yourself. A lot of times at the latest, this comes when you move off campus. But this is a skill set that is absolutely going to be something that outlasts not only your college career, but if you go on to play professionally, your professional career. We all at some point are going to come to a time period where we need to be able to provide, feed, and fuel ourselves. The sooner that you learn that, the sooner you're going to be able to ensure that you are just optimally fueling your body to get the most out of each and every training session, each and every game, to be able to make the most out of the opportunities in front of you. Then, how much should I really be able to cook before I leave? You don't need to be able to cook a ton. You don't need to be able to cook like an entire Cheesecake Factory menu sized list of items. Pick a few key core meals that you really enjoy and use that as the staple items. Start with, say, 1 breakfast and then 2 lunch/dinner items. If you get those staples down, you're going to be in a fantastic position. You don't need to know how to cook 100 different things, because if you get those 3 meals down, the biggest thing is that you now likely understand the process. and the way in which to be able to prepare food. And once you get that, then you're going to be able to just look at a recipe and be like, okay, let's give this a try. And gradually be able to build that recipe bank of meals that you can prepare and enjoy for yourself. But it starts with just three. You don't need a ton, but you do need to start. And then what's the first thing to focus on? That's going to be the grocery list. It all starts with the grocery list because the food that we're preparing, we need to have the ingredients. The way we get the ingredients is getting it from a grocery store. And the way that we know what to get at the grocery store is being able to break down what types of items are needed for said recipes. What types of foods am I needing to fuel myself for the rest of the day, for the week? And then writing out that grocery list and then being able to understand, how do I acquire it? Nowadays, there's a whole lot of great grocery delivery apps and services that do make that a little bit more streamlined, but that's not always going to be the case. So being able to understand and build comfort with walking through and navigating the grocery store itself is going to be incredibly valuable. So it starts with that grocery list, getting the quantities down, making sure you understand how much food you need to be ordering and acquiring to get through the week, and then navigating how and where to go about picking it all up to ensure that you have it. Because once we get the groceries, then we start the cooking process. But it all starts with that grocery list.